So what we have to do is learn how to take this ego of ours, this part of us that believes that who we are is what we have and what we do and what other people think of us. But remember, if you grow up believing that you are what you do, then when you don't, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what you have, when it's gone, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what other people think of you, your reputation, which we raise people to believe, I have to be concerned with what other people think of me. Take this ego and retrain it. And one of the ways that you do to retrain it is, first, you take this idea that the ego has of fear. What are you afraid of? Anybody out there, what are you afraid of? Shift from fear to curiosity. Become curious about what you're afraid of. That's what Lao Tzu taught me. Become curious about what you're afraid of. You're afraid of flying? Get curious about that. Get interested in that. You're afraid of snakes, you're afraid of disapproval, you're afraid. Just shift from fear and say, I'm going to become more curious about what I'm afraid of. And then take all of the things that you're attached to, like all of your photographs, like all of your furniture, like all of your clothing, like all of the stuff that you find so much attachment to, and start letting it go. Start letting it go. You know, the day that I turned that key on May the 11th in 2006, I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew there was a shift taking place. I felt freer than I'd ever felt, I think, in my life. In my mid-60s, out there on a whole new adventure. And here we are talking about it on national television, on PBS. Take that idea that you have to be attached to things and know that you came in with nothing, with no thing. And you're going to leave with nothing, with no thing. And understand that your life is a parenthesis in eternity. Live there without attachments. And then take your need to be in control of yourself, of others, of the situation, and shift from control to trust. Begin to have a trust. Lao Tzu is profound about this. In each one of the 81 verses, it comes up about 60 times as you look at letting go and letting God, allowing yourself to trust in your nature, allowing yourself to no longer believe that everything has to be controlled by me, and that other people no longer have to be in control of me as well. Begin to trust. Just like you did for the first 9 months. You trusted. Your nose showed up. Your height showed up. Your eyes showed up. Whatever. It all showed up. It's all perfect. It's all divine. So why not wander through your life and have this wonderful, peaceful knowing that it's all fine? And finally, shift from your sense of entitlement. Nobody can treat me that way. I'm entitled to have this. Well, I paid for that. I let go. I mean, that in 1 year, I let go of all of my entitlements. I don't feel I'm entitled to anything. I'm just here. Shift from entitlements to radical humility. Lao Tzu speaks about it so often. Stay humble. Stay low. The greatest leaders are the ones who do the least. The ones who stay back and just model and allow. And at the end of the day, in one of the verses of the Tao, it says, the people will say, we did it ourselves. We did it ourselves. In verse 49 of the Tao Te Ching, here's an exact quote. The sage is kind to the kind and kind to the unkind because the nature of his being is kindness. And also, be wise and help all beings impartially, abandoning none. You know what I do? Just before I did this program, I have to admit I was nervous. I was humbled by it. Like who are you, Wayne Dyer? Who are you to read the Tao and believe that you can interpret it on television and interpret it in a book and spend a year and say, like, I got real humble with that. And you know what I say? Tao, which is just another word for God, or Source, or Krishna, or Allah, or whatever you want to call it, guide me. Guide me now. I have that awareness before I come out. If you knew, it says in the Course in Miracles, if you knew who walked beside you, at all times, on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. Okay, let's go on to the next thought, to change. So you're changing from not trusting in your nature to trusting in your nature. You change your thought from I need more to what I call living contentment. What is this thing about more? It's the mantra of the ego, isn't it? I have to have more. I have to collect more stuff. I have to have more friends. I have to have more money. It's more, 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 more. When where you came from nowhere. You don't need anything. It's a continuous bombardment that we are all exposed to in this whole world of believing that we have to have more. It's one of the reasons why I love public television so much. You don't see ads on PBS. You don't have to be constantly exposed to the idea that you have to have more and you have to get more, and if you don't have this, then you're not complete, and so on. So we get bombarded with this idea of attracting more. And Lao Tzu says, live contentment. Live in a state of being contented. Here's verse 81, the last verse of the Tao Te Ching, my favorite translation of it, and I put it right into the book. Sages do not accumulate anything, but give everything to others. Having more, the more they give. And while I don't think that it's very possible for most of us to ever completely get rid of this ego, as long as we're incarnated into a human form, I do believe that it is possible for us to tame it and to make it less of a dominant force in our lives by no longer having such an important role placed on being right and making other people wrong. One of the ways to begin to work at treasuring your divinity is to practice being kind rather than being right in as many occasions as you possibly can. And you have lots of opportunities to do this on a daily basis. Thousands of them show up in little tiny interactions in virtually every place you go, with strangers, with your children, with your spouses, on the telephone, ordering something in a restaurant, whatever. There's always this part of us that is the ego that wants to be right, that wants to make the dust rise from the earth with your swagger. And after a while, you start noticing it. You start observing it. As your own ego becomes less and less of a dominant force in your life, you start to notice how much other people's ego is playing such a role, how much strutting there is, how much posturing there is, how much bragging takes place. You can see it in body language. You can see it in the way that people deal with each other. You can see it in lines at the grocery store. You can see it when you're trying to get your ticket straightened out at the airport, whatever it might be. There's this placing somebody else in a position of inferiority, and you are here to do this for me, and I'm more important than. And it isn't said that way, but it's sort of communicated. And you think to yourself that all of these people, I do it all the time, all of these people are nothing more than me in an earlier time in my life. That this is the way I was. I see it in my past relationships. I see it in the way that I dealt with my children years ago and the way that I deal with them now. I see it in noticing that it's easier now for me to be kind and to suspend being right. And I'm right almost all the time. But I no longer need to point it out, except for right now, of course. But the idea that even if you know that when you're talking to someone that they're completely wrong, if you can suspend the need to point it out, and instead just say something kind back in response. If you can just practice doing that wherever you are, those are points towards treasuring your divinity. It's not about worshiping more. It's not about getting down on your knees and practicing somebody else's orthodoxy. It's not about fitting in. It's not about memorizing verses out of the Bible. Or the Quran or the Torah or whatever. It's not about that. It's about practicing being Christ-like rather than Christian. It's about practicing being Buddha-like rather than Buddhist. It's about practicing being Muhammad-like rather than Muslim. Muhammad said, don't even harm any tree that has a green leaf growing on it. If there's a green leaf growing on it, don't harm it. Practice that. That kind of love and admiration for humanity. Live as much as you can those principles. And all it amounts to is simply beginning a process of moving out of the lowest levels of consciousness. The lowest level of consciousness is ego consciousness. Ego, some have suggested EGO, is an acronym for edging God out. That as you edge God out of your life, what you have done is you have separated yourself from your divinity, believed that you are those 6 things, separate from everyone, separate from what you would like to attract into your life, separate from God, your reputation. You start believing that this is who you are, and you start living this way, and you look upon your divinity as something that is out there that you'll see, you'll talk to on at the synagogue on Saturday or at church on Sunday morning or whatever. And you'll practice during certain days, like we call, at the end of the year, 30 days of fasting, and this makes me, closer to God and so on. To me, it's about applying the principles of moving past ego consciousness. And when I see conflicts between one group and another, men versus women, when I see conflicts between people who are older and people who are younger, when you see conflicts existing between people who have one color skin and a different color of skin, when you see conflicts between people who wear a robe versus those who wear a yarmulke, when you see all of these divisions, and there are just endless numbers of them that we pigeonhole ourselves into, they are still the cause of virtually all conflicts on the planet. We still are dividing ourselves. We don't understand that this is a round planet, and on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides. There are no sides.
Mindfulness just is, Here's one of the Thich Nhat Hanh's quotes. He says, "Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet." It's a practice of putting your mind and your consciousness onto exactly where you are in the moment, and being able to find beauty. It's one of the great teachings that I learned as a young man is that looking at beauty in the world is the very first step in purifying the mind. To be able to find beauty. I remember the story I told of Viktor Frankl when I was with him in 1978 on a panel in Vienna, the great Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And he said that they would give, we had lunch after that, just the two of us. I was very, very touched, and it was one of the most memorable moments of my life. And he said to me, when we were given a bowl of dirty water with a floating fish head in it, and that was our protein for the day. And he said you had to be able to find a way to find beauty in that. He said when we're challenged with circumstances over which we have absolutely no control, that we're challenged to change ourselves. And instead of looking at this as poor me and this shouldn't be happening and isn't this awful, but looking at it in terms of this is where I am. This is where I am in this moment. And in this moment, I'm going to find beauty in this and be in a state of appreciation for this fish, for it's giving its life to me. It's allowing me to survive and so on. And he said the people, he told me, and I'll never forget this, he said the people in the concentration camps, this was in Auschwitz, in Poland, he said the people who couldn't find beauty in the circumstances that they were in, the horrible circumstances that they were in, he said they would always perish. He said, you've got to be able to see beauty. The famous line from John Keats in Ode on a Grecian Urn, beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. That's all you need to know on earth. That's all you know on earth, and all you need to know. And so that this ability, and that's what mindfulness is. It's walking on the earth and kissing the ground with your feet with each step that you take and becoming aware of it. He talks frequently about being able to find beauty in just drying a dish. Yeah, a lot of people sit down, and while they're, while they're sitting down for a meal, they're already thinking about what they're going to have for dessert, and instead of thinking, instead of just being there in this moment. If this is the appetizer and this is the bite that I'm taking, and and this is what I'm tasting in this moment, and to find beauty in virtually everything that there is in you. It's this way of making the mind pure.
Every beauty which is seen here below, down here below, by persons of perception resembles more than anything else that celestial source from which we all come. Isn't that great? Every beauty that we see resembles more than anything else that source. We're talking about source, connecting to source, from which we all come. Do you see beauty? Do you see it more or less in your life? Can you find it in a homeless person urinating on the street? Can you find beauty in a cockroach? As you reach higher levels of consciousness, you begin to see, not only do you see beauty everywhere and in everything, you begin to recognize it as truth.
And, you can look around, whoever you are, listening, wherever you are on this planet right now, look out your window, or look to your right, or look to your left, wherever you are, in a little room someplace, or sitting on a beach somewhere, or driving in your car, or whatever it may be, and just look around. What I want to say to all of you is that, the very first step in purifying your mind and moving into higher levels of consciousness, and recognizing the eternal, infinite consciousness that you are, is to look at beauty in the world and see it in as many places as you can. And if you're a writer, you write a poem about it. I mean, there's 3 or 4 poems in there right now that and if I were if Rumi were here listening, and maybe he is, maybe that was Rumi, because I have such a love affair with his poetry. Maybe it was Rumi walking across my balcony on the railing, saying, "Find beauty in me." Just one of the strangest experiences that I've had, and that all came from Thich Nhat Hanh. And since we had that experience, and since I was reading him this week, I've been finding beauty in everything, in every little bird that flies by, and every person that's out there, and every wave that shows up, and so on.
One, it seems to me, that is most important is that a leader is someone who sees the connection to the whole, the oneness, the unity. And followers rarely do. And you can get leaders from people who are in positions of followers if you look for these 2 qualities. The first is seeing the big picture, if you will, or the connection to the whole. Leaders always seem to see that. Whereas followers, if you've got a large corporation, within a department, the follower is somebody who only sees their job and what they have to do. So they get trained to do this particular thing, and they don't really see how it impacts on the next department, and on the next department, and on the entire company, and on the entire corporate structure. They're not able to see that. They will say things like, "It's not my department. I don't do those kind of things. It's not my responsibility. You have to go to the accounting department to get at that. Or you'll have to call shipping," or whatever it may be. And they stay that way. It's like they have that quality, and they almost stay that way their entire lives. There's no connection to the whole. Whereas a leader will see that everything that a person does within a department, not only how it affects them in the department, but how it affects the next department, and how it affects the entire business, and how it affects the profit picture, and so on. And so you will see leaders being conscious of the entire business unit. And that person will almost always elevate up to a point where they get to the top of the business or in positions of leadership, because they're not just narrowly looking at how what I do affects just me. The second thing is that leaders, as opposed to followers, are people who see the long-range effect of everything that is being done. They don't look at just how I'm acting today. For example, if you're getting on an airplane and a flight attendant is rude to a customer. The leader, if they're sitting there looking at that, or even if they're a flight attendant who has these leader qualities, not only sees how that impacts on the entire organization, the entire airline, but they see how that impacts on future business as well. A year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. If I have a bad experience with a person on an airline that turns me off to them, it isn't that individual that I'm going to be turned off to, because they're just out of my life now. So the next time I'm going to make a reservation, I'm going to pick a different airline if there's one available. I might do that for 10 years. So that one tiny moment of truth that you have as a follower with a customer, if that person doesn't see the whole and doesn't also see the long-range thing, will affect them dramatically. And leaders always seem to know that. And so they're not just being polite and service-oriented and kind and decent to people because that's what they've been trained to do. They are being that way, first of all, because that's the way they are. That's the way they think. And as a result of the way they think, they see their connection to not only the organization and the future of the organization, they see a bigger picture. And that's really what this is about, this whole program, what we're talking about here. That's what the whole thing is about. It's like seeing the biggest picture of all, that how you behave towards your fellow man not only affects you and them and the organization and the profit picture a year from now or 2 years from now, but it affects all of us. It affects all of mankind. It's that big a picture that I'm trying to get at here. Yes, there are little tiny segments that we may be more interested in, but that makes us followers too, when you think about it. I mean, if you're only thinking about your airline or you're only thinking about your company and how their behavior impacts on the organization or in the future, then you're still limiting yourself, because it also impacts on your city or your community, and it impacts on your country, and it impacts on the world, and it impacts on all of humanity, and it impacts on the universe as well. I work for myself. I'm not in anybody else's business. I see the biggest picture of all, that ripples throughout all of humanity. And you can bring it back down to apply these principles in your daily business and in your family and in your relationship, but you can expand them outward as well, so that you begin to see that every negative act, every hostile act, everything that is not in harmony that you do, every person who is not in harmony, that person cannot cooperate with the person next to him. He will want to gobble them up like a cancer. And when they are in harmony, and enough of us get into harmony, then it impacts on the entire planet. So we have to be able to extend our vision. If we're thinking of ourselves as leaders, it's one thing to be a great leader within your corporation, or even within your department, or even within your own family. But another thing completely to be a great leader of mankind. And we all have to see ourselves that way. We have to extend out as far as we can and back down as small as we can. And that's how it impacts on everything and everyone.
Do I pray as if my prayers are already realized? The traditional means of prayer that I was exposed to throughout my life involved asking for something and hoping that an external God would provide me with the answers for my wishes. A close friend and colleague of mine, Greg Braden, who is also a student and admirer of Neville, writes in his penetrating book, The Isaiah Effect, "Rather than asking that the outcome of our prayer come to pass, we acknowledge our role as an active part of creation and give thanks for what we are certain that we have created. Whether we see immediate results or not, our thanks acknowledge that somewhere in creation our prayer has already been fulfilled." Unquote. This may appear to contradict the ask and you shall receive version of prayer that you are likely exposed to. It may feel new, but it is so important that you acknowledge your own divine role in the fulfillment of your spiritually aligned desires for yourself and others. A vision is within your imagination as you enter into your sacred practice of prayer, one that is so strong you can already feel its fulfillment in your own body. To once again quote Neville, quote, "The moment you accept the wish as an accomplished fact, the subconscious finds means for its realization. To pray successfully, then, you must yield to the wish, that is, feel the wish fulfilled." Unquote. Being a piece of God, and therefore altogether God, as a part of the entire process of creation, you become an active participant in your own private prayerful moments. Consider shutting out your senses completely, along with all of the evidence they continually place before you, because you are, in your prayers, going to attempt to feel what they, that is, your senses, will most assuredly deny. Perhaps describing what I do will help you. When I pray, I always yield to the wish that I have for myself, my loved ones, and the entire planet, and all of its inhabitants, rather than attempting to force my wish or to have God take over and do my bidding for me. In my mind, I see my wishes as accomplished, and I experience what that feels like, savoring the feeling in my body. I stay in a profound state of gratitude. My prayer is without effort. Rather, it is felt as an already accomplished fact. I then act as if what it is I am praying for is my truth, even if my senses and all those about me give evidence to the contrary. I'm not asking for special favors because I do not believe in an ego-constructed deity who plays favorites, or who has the ability to heal everyone, yet withholds these favors because he or she is looking for something from me. I'm a part of the entire business of creation. I am divine consciousness, and I never forget it. I know I have the capacity to make conscious contact with my source of creation. There's no fear of insulting a mythical God. In the I Am Discourses, Saint Germain says, quote, I say to the students in all sincerity, there is no possible way of attaining a quality or a desired attribute without claiming it, unquote. With this in mind, I claim peace, health, happiness, joy, prosperity for everyone I know in my life. I claim peace and contentment for myself, for humanity, and the entire world. In my prayers, I give thanks for my mysterious role in all of this, and I reprogram my subconscious mind so I feel this in my body. I leave my sacred prayer time and go about the activities of my life, whatever they may be, with this feeling within me. I am not discouraged by what my senses might be reporting. I have left all ideas of time and timing behind, and I trust in the I Am presence that is my true identity. Often at night I engage in prayerful visualization. I visualize faces of people I know who have crossed over and left the outer world, people I've seen in the media but have never met, and people I knew as a child. I surround them with love. I see the love, and I feel it for them and myself. I am calling in the I Am presence. As the I Am Discourses teach, quote, the undesirable moves out and the I Am presence moves in, and you find that you have truly entered into a new world, filled with the happiness and perfection you have always known existed somewhere within your own heart, unquote. This is prayer to me, and when I emerge from these moments of prayer, it's as if I've attended a movie and seen the successful end of the film, even though I may not have been shown precisely how that ending was achieved. This is not only the great power of prayer, it is also the power of a wishes-fulfilled life. No ego, no force, no special privileges, simply an awareness of the power that exists within us when we assume that what we pray for, always aligned with our highest selves, is a completed fact. We are, each and every one of us, a participant in this dance of creation.
What I call authentic prayer is inviting divine desire to express itself through myself. It expresses my experience of oneness with the divine energy. This may sound like a radical or even blasphemous notion, but is the source of all spiritual traditions. Here's a few examples. In Christianity, they say the kingdom of heaven is within you. In Islam, they say those who know themselves know their God. In Buddhism, they say, look within, you are the Buddha. In Vedanta, they say, Atman, or individual consciousness, and Brahman, universal consciousness, are one. Yoga says God dwells within you as you. Confucianism, heaven, earth, and human are of one body. And in the Upanishads, the ancient texts of the Hindus, by understanding the self, all this universe is known. Trust, then, is the cornerstone of my praying, and with it comes the peace that is the essence of manifesting.
That this intelligence is something that we can all access and create not just what we do in our physical world every day, which is where it all comes from, but we can begin to create miracles for ourselves in our lives. Aldous Huxley, in the Perennial Philosophy, he talked about 3 things that all ages of man and all civilizations since the beginning of time all have had in common about what I'm talking about here this morning. All ages, all civilizations, from the ancient cavemen and their totems to the African traditions, to the New Guinea traditions, to the European and the Eastern traditions, and the Indian and the Japanese tradition. And these are people and places that have never intersected with each other in a physical way. All of them have had what Huxley called 3 things they have in common. If you look at the philosophers, the people who have spoken for their people at that time, they've all believed that there is an invisible intelligence beyond the world of the changing. All ages of man, somehow, their most enlightened beings know this. There is an invisible world beyond the world of the changing. Number 2, all ages, all civilizations who've never intersected with each other have all believed that that invisible intelligence is a part of every single human being. All ages. That it isn't something that is some people get and some people don't. It excludes no one. And 3, all ages of man have known and believed that the purpose of life is to discover God, or to discover whatever it is that you want to call that invisible intelligence that suffuses all form in the universe and allows not only you to take notes and to ice skate after 34 years of being away from them, but it allows the flowers to grow, and it allows the planets to align, and it allows the whole thing to exist. So if you want to call it God or soul or spirit or consciousness or Ralph, it doesn't really make any difference what name you put on it. It is not what you call it. It is in every one of us. We all have it. We couldn't be here without it. See, you will discover, as I discovered when my grandmother died, that when they weighed her just before her death at the age of 94 at Henry Ford Hospital, that she weighed 133 pounds. And then after she died, and there was this package, this container left that they were preparing to embalm. It wasn't my grandmother. It was now just a package. That it weighed 133 pounds as they waited for the death certificate. Powerful metaphor there for me in that moment was that whatever it is that constitutes your very life, it doesn't weigh anything. When life leaves the package that you showed up in, the package weighs the same. So your life is something other than the package. And when you get that, you understand that who you are is really this soul with a body, rather than this body with a soul. Or as I said, and you'll see it when you believe it, you're a human being. You're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. But the quality of that human experience is dependent upon how able and willing you are to make contact with that invisible intelligence that suffuses you and all form in the universe, that is independent and outside of this physical form that you showed up in. This physical form that you showed up in was all handled for you in a split second. All handled in this infinitesimally tiny speck. In this little speck, when 2 little drops of human protoplasm collided, everything you needed for your form was handled for you. And you can't even begin to comprehend it. A heart starts beating inside a mother's womb 6 or 7 weeks after conception, And it's a complete and total mystery to everyone in the scientific world, in the medical world, and the only people that even have a grasp on it are the poets. Whatever that something is, that invisibleness that allows you to be, we'll call it awareness, pure awareness.
Honoring your worthiness to receive. In order to become a manifester, literally taking part in the process of co-creating your life and attracting to yourself the objects of your heart's desire, you must know that you are worthy of receiving. This will mean examining the attitudes that you knowingly and unknowingly hold about your life. Your thoughts, which are the architects of the foundation of your material world, are what you want to examine. You can remind yourself all day long that the same power that brought anything into the physical world also brought you. But if you do not feel worthy, you will disrupt the natural flow of energy into your life and create a blockage that makes manifestation impossible. The fifth principle reminds you that you are worthy of abundance. If your thoughts are based on an image of unworthiness for any reason at all, you will manifest what those thoughts impart to the universal mind. The energy described in the fourth principle will align with what it is that you radiate. As a man thinks, so is he, are not just empty words. Thinking that abundance is incompatible with spirituality is a myth that influences many of us and is the largest impediment there is to feeling worthy. Take a look around your world and notice the abundance and endlessness of our universe. It goes on and on beyond our ability to imagine its vastness. This abundance flows from the same energy that comprises our fundamental essence. It is you. You are it. Material form is how spirit makes itself known to us while we are in form ourselves. Spirit manifests in trees and oceans and fish, birds, minerals, vegetables, flowers, and you. When we adopt an attitude of spirit being incompatible with matter, we are denying the spirit that is in matter as its originating energy. We also deny the validity of ourselves as spiritual beings. When we shift to seeing that together they comprise one harmonious whole, we remove the stigma of selfishness. Just as each one of us is one harmonious whole comprised of spirit and matter, so too is the entire universe. The process of life taking form is a mystery. That mystery is governed by a creative energy that is knowable when we genuinely feel worthy of receiving its blessings in form. Abundance is the way of the creative force in the universe. You are entitled to have abundance in your life and to radiate prosperity to all that you encounter in your world. Nothing is gained by making yourself small and insignificant other than to manifest smallness and insignificance into your life.
This creative source reacts to your belief in shortages with a fulfillment of your belief. So if you believe and know and are certain that you can't attract abundance into your life, but I want to tell you tonight, you tuned in to somebody who knows about abundance. I have always been able to create abundance in my life. When I was a little kid, all the other kids in the places that I lived and so on, and even when we got back at home with my mom, pop bottles. You remember soda pop bottles? You could collect them, little knee-high bottles and Pepsi-Cola bottles and Coca-Cola bottles, and 2 cents if you took them back. I was a master at collecting pop bottles. I could manifest a pop bottle just like that. It was just... We used to have furnaces that had coal in them, and I would go along and I would empty people's ashes that they would set out. I'd just take it out to the alleys. I would go to the grocery store, and because my imagination was always working on abundance, I would carry groceries out for little old ladies. You know what I'm doing today? Right now? Collecting pop bottles and taking out ashes and taking out groceries for little old ladies. Just a bigger stage. See, if I came to this source and said, I don't have enough, this source doesn't know how to react to I don't have enough. This source is an endless supply. It's like the ocean. You can take a 10 million gallon tank to the ocean of abundance, and you can take it out every hour, or you can take a thimble once a year. And the ocean doesn't care. It makes no difference to the ocean because everything returns to this source. Every time I walk, wherever I go, in fact, it happened to me this morning. I found a dime That's like major, a dime. That's 10 pennies. That's 5 bottles. And whenever I bend over, and I notice that it gets a little further away, I bend over and I pick up this coin, and I always say, thank you, God, for this symbol of abundance that always flows into my life. Never once have I ever said, how come only a dime? I need $1,000. Why are you only giving me a dime? The face of abundance is like you have to come to this source not with what is missing, because it doesn't know. There's nothing missing. This source, which is the source of all, doesn't know about what's missing. When you say, please give me what is missing, it'll just reaffirm your belief in things being missing. You have to come to this source by being abundant, by being in a state of gratitude, by being thankful for all that you are, and seeing yourself as attracting more and more of that, and being willing to give it away.
Line by Albert Einstein when he was talking to his students about trying to solve mathematical problems and equations. He said, you can't ever solve a problem with the same mind that created it. It's what they call sometimes in management circles thinking outside of the dots or outside of the box. Getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of looking at things the way you've always looked at them, and having a different kind of an awareness. I came across this quote not too long ago. Moving away the clouds does not make the sunshine. It merely reveals what was hidden all along. The sunshine, the sun is always there. And you don't make it shine by just taking things away. There's something inside all of us that is hidden. And it's the ability to, I call it rewriting our agreement with reality. It requires a new kind of awareness, a willingness, if you will, to see yourself as potentially capable of virtually anything. I've always loved the observation from the New Testament of Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. That within each and every one of us there is this ability to be healers. There's this ability to be able to manifest and attract anything into our lives that we put our attention on. There's this ability to live at such a high level of consciousness that we can transcend our bodies. My internal wiring has always been one of whatever it is that I've got in my life as a problem, that I have to take responsibility for it, but I also have the capacity to be able to change it. And not only to change around what it is that is not working for me, but also to change around what I have been attracting into my life. I think it begins with this this whole idea of being inspired. I've always liked that word, inspired, inspiration, because its origin is in spirit. And then the opposite word is being informed. And so when you're in form, in the physical world, when you're in form, you get information. You get lots of information. And this is what we call the information age, right? So there's no shortage of information. They say that on a little chip the size of your thumbnail, we can put the names and addresses of everybody in the United States and Canada on a little chip the size of your thumbnail. That's really more information, I think, than we need. What we are doing is we are moving from the age of information to the age of inspiration, I believe. And as we move into the age of inspiration, where collectively mankind is beginning to have a collective capacity to be able to think thoughts which empower us rather than which weaken us, which, according to Hawkins' research, up until about 1985 or 1986, collectively, mankind's collective thoughts always produced that which weakens us. And now, in the last few years, we have moved above the level where man's collective consciousness is at least at a place where collectively we are empowering ourselves rather than using force. And as we move into the world of inspiration, we have to understand what that means. And Patanjali had a wonderful observation. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. He said, when you are inspired, that is, in spirit, and remember, it is in the world of spirit, it is in the world of thoughts where we change, where we go to the place where we create anything we want for ourselves in our lives. So that remembering here, the theme is that you can't solve any problem that you might have in your life with the same mind that created it. So you're moving into a place now called spirit. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. We're moving into the world of the invisible now. When you are inspired, and think about the moments in your life when you've had the most inspiration, inspirado. You lose any touch of fatigue. I have gone and been inspired at moments in my life when I have written for almost 24 straight hours without stopping, without eating, without thinking about sleep. I just got into one of those modes, what we call a zone sometimes, where everything just flowed. When you are in that place, you transcend everything. And you don't worry about whether people are going to call you or not call you. You don't worry about your children. You don't worry about being sick. You don't think about the cold that you might have. You don't think about being tired and how much sleep you'll need. When you're inspired, you're in spirit. When you're in spirit, you're connected to your source. And now what you're doing is you're moving out of the mindset of inform or information, which is where all problems occur in the world of the physical, and you're shifting into the world of spirit.
We all are nervous sometimes, and we're shy sometimes, and we're afraid sometimes, and we don't take risks sometimes, and we're fearful, and we have to be careful, and those are all, that's what it means to be human. And we try to get as many people as we can on our side. So if we can get ourselves lumped with the majority, then we can feel greater. But every great innovative idea that ever happened started with a minority, started with an individual thinking like that. Will Rogers said one time, if you find yourself on the side of the majority, you better reform. If you're thinking just like everybody else thinks, what have you got to offer? What is it that this unique thing, this unique human being that has never existed before, will never exist again, has never existed in this day as it exists, as you do in this day, just like every single day. Not only are you unique on this planet, but every day you're here, you're unique on this planet. Instead of that, we say, how can we get everybody to think like I do? Let's get into majority kind of thinking, you see. And that's like one of the first things to understand, that in order to be, Emerson said it, he talked about conformity, he said, to be a man you must therefore by nature be a nonconformist. And yet we have difficulty with non-conforming people, with people who have different ideas, with people who want to try something different, people who don't accept that we always have to be the way we've always been. We have quite a bit of difficulty with that. Most human beings use about 1/100th of their potential within their brains that it's capable of using. And every time we see somebody who is able to do things that seem so phenomenal, instantly we say, well, that's a weird person, or that's a freak, they must be faking it, or whatever. When there are places in the world where people don't even think pain, they don't even have words. There are some cultures, particularly in Eastern philosophies, where pain itself is not even a part of their vocabulary. They don't even invent words for that because they train themselves not to think in ways that are going to be immobilizing and depressing and so on. And I would work on this when I was working with people early in my career. And one of the greatest things that you can learn in your life is the understanding that as you go through your life, even the people who love you the most are not going to approve of you half of the time. Somebody says, "You're a nerd." Terrible thing. I mean, one of the things you have a choice. You say, "Oh my God, they know." They've discovered it already. And you act like a neurotic. You have that choice. You have other choices as well. The choice to ignore that. The choice to say that's somebody else's opinion. If somebody says to me, "Wayne Dyer, I don't like your books." Well, I expect that when you say something in public, when you talk to a lot of people, when you write something, that there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to like what you say. One of the highest levels, one of the highest places you can get to in your life is a place called being independent of the good opinion of other people. Not necessarily needing everyone to approve of you all of the time. And we ought to have a lot of people out there who understand that, so that when they go through their lives and they run into disapproval, that instead of becoming depressed about that, that you understand that that's a condition. That's what it means to be a human being. I'm saying don't become immobilized, ever, by what anybody else thinks of you. And when you do, understand that all you are doing is saying your opinion of me is more important than my own opinion of myself. Every time you're down. Every time you're down. That you are making other people's opinions of you more important. Now, a great misinterpretation there is that somehow this is a selfish philosophy. Believe me, there's nothing selfish in that. One of the simplest learnings that all children seem to understand, the very simple understanding that you can't give away what you don't have. You can't give away what you don't have, obviously. You can't give away $100 if you don't have it. You can't give away love for others if you don't have it for yourself. You can't give away success if you don't have it for yourself. You can't love another human being at all if you don't love yourself first. And think of yourself as a worthy person. So that if you want to be a great altruist, a philanthropist, somebody who loves everybody in the world, then you've got to get your own house in order. And that's all I'm saying. Get your own house in order, your own self in order, so that you can become one of those people that have transcended, who have gone beyond simply worrying about how they're going to cope with their lives. It mystifies me sometimes. We all have this little child within us, and all little children know how to be happy. All little children know how to be self-actualized, fully functioning, creatively alive. They know how to enjoy their lives. And then somehow they lose it somewhere along the way. And as we get to be adults, we forget what we had. It's the whole theory of whether a glass is half full or half empty. I mean, it's always half full to me. Always half full. If you believe that it's half empty, it's the same thing as saying people are basically evil. And that's a basis for a big theory in psychology. That's what psychoanalytic theory is really basically all about, is that each one of us have an id somewhere within us, and that's an untamed monster. That's something that we have to watch out for, and it will capture us, and it'll destroy us, and it's that all of us have this evil creature residing within us. I can't buy that. I just can't buy that. I look at little children and the way they are, I don't see it. I refuse to think that, even though I know that there are people who behave in evil ways. I believe basically that within each one of us is a reservoir of love and beauty and appreciation and so on, and that we've often lost it in the name of trying to get ahead of the other guy or trying to be successful or whatever. People who know how to enjoy their lives are never a burden to anybody else. They just want to be left alone. Just quit bugging me. Don't always be looking over your shoulder. Don't be monitoring everything that I do. Stop telling me how to live. Stop telling me what to do. Stop trying to live your life through me. Highly functioning people know how to live their lives, and they're never a burden to anybody.